Okay, if we go to your questions, B, the first one. Paraphrase Madison's premise in lines 17 to 26. What's a premise? Someone hit me with what's a premise. Rowan?
Like the basis of what he's trying to say.
Yes. It's the statement that the author presents to serve as like the basis for the argument. Okay? So, if we go back to the book, lines 17 through 26. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Complaints are everywhere heard from our most considerate and virtuous citizens, equally the friends of public and private faith, and of public and personal liberty, that our governments are too unstable, that the public good is disregarded in the conflicts of rival parties, and that measures are too often decided, not according to the rules of justice and the rights of the minor party, but by the superior force of an interested and overbearing majority. However anxiously we may wish that these complaints had no foundation, the evidence of known facts will not permit us to deny that they are in some degree true. Okay? I want you to summarize that in your own words. Okay, what is his argument there? Okay? This is your work. So you should be working on this code. That's an actual assignment for today. You lost. Okay. What is he saying about factions and governments? What is he trying to argue in that portion? Okay, and why is the government unstable? Yes. Did everyone hear what Carson said? Say it again, Carson.
Because the parties are fighting?
Yeah. So governments are unstable because different groups force their own agendas, right? Because it says right here, our governments are too unstable that the public is disregarded in the conflicts of rival parties, and that measures are too often decided not according to the rules of justice, but by the superior force of an interested and overbearing majority. Okay? So Carson was saying the government is unstable because... Why, Carson? That's one way to put it. Okay? And he says here, he's talking about, it's not according to the rules of justice and the rights of the minor party, but by the superior force of an interested and overbearing majority. Alright? So he's saying that sometimes the majority can force a certain agenda, not necessarily going through what everyone wants. Is that something we see today in politics? Logan's like, heck yeah.
These questions out of the textbook.
Mm-hmm. I just adjusted them.
My OCD is very mad at me because they're all out of order.
What?
Because like my OCD is like they're all out.
Oh yeah, because they're. Well, I thought that before we got your guys' textbooks, I thought that you would have the questions, because I don't know why you wouldn't have like reading questions. So I just did the letters, so you guys would just go find the letters. So then I didn't want to like make it even more confusing and then not use the letters. Raise your hand if you need more time on letter B. Advocate for yourself if you need more time. Okay.
By a faction, I understand a number of citizens, whether amounting to a majority or a minority of the whole, who are united and actuated by some common impulse of passion or of interest, adverse to the rights of other citizens, or to the permanent and aggregate interests of the community. There are two methods of curing the mischiefs of faction. The one by removing its causes, the other by controlling its effects. There are again two methods of removing the causes of faction. The one by destroying the liberty which is essential to its existence. The other by giving to every citizen the same opinions, the same passions, and the same interests.
Okay, what does he suggest for the two ways that remove the cause of a faction? What did he just say right there? I just want to make sure we're understanding. He says there are again two methods of removing the causes of faction. That one by destroying the liberty which is essential to his existence, the other by giving to every citizen the same opinions, the same passions, and the same interests. So what are the two ways that you can destroy the cause of a faction? Ethan, got any ideas?
No, honestly.
Okay.
Is it the destroying liberty and giving to every citizen the same things?
Yes, you understand what that's saying in like modern day English. Number one is taking away freedom. Okay? Taking away the freedom to cause a faction, to make a faction. Number two says, by giving to every citizen the same opinions, the same passions, and the same interests. What does that mean? Max? And can everyone have the same ideas? No, they can't. You're never going to have how many people are in the country? Hundreds of millions? Okay. Hundreds of millions of people are never going to have the same opinion. Okay. So are either of those really achievable? No, but we're always going to have different groups. We're always going to have different groups and different beliefs.
In interests. It could never be more truly said than of the first remedy that it was worse than the disease. Liberty is to faction what air is to fire, an ailment without which it instantly expires. But it could not be less folly to abolish liberty, which is essential to political life, because it nourishes faction, than it would be to wish the annihilation of air, which is essential to animal life, because it imparts to fire its destructive agency. The second expedient is as impracticable as the first would be unwise. As long as the reason of man continues fallible, and he is at liberty to exercise it, different opinions will be formed. As long as the connection subsists between his reason and his self-love, his opinions and his passions will have a reciprocal influence on each other, and the former will be objects to which the latter will attach themselves.
Okay. Do we understand that? He's saying both ways to get rid of factions are, the word he used was impracticable, which I've never even, I think that's now evolved to impractical. Alright. That's what I would go with, okay? So, letter D is coming up here. Letter D says, tell how Madison uses logic to explain why the different abilities of people will naturally keep society from establishing a single opinion. Okay?
Wait, hang on. Is it D like an improper citation?
It's not, that's not MLA format.
Oh, okay.
That's just saying it.
The diversity in the faculties of men, from which the rights of property originate, is not less an insuperable obstacle to a uniformity of interests. The protection of these faculties is the first object of government. From the protection of different and unequal faculties of acquiring property, the possession of different degrees and kinds of property immediately results, and from the influence of these on the sentiments and views of the respective proprietors ensues a division of the society into different interests and parties.
Okay. So how does he explain why the differing abilities of people will naturally keep society from establishing a single opinion? Okay? in that paragraph. He says the diversity in the faculties of men from which the rights of property originate is not less than insuperable, which means invincible or unconquerable, obstacle to a uniformity of interest. The protection of these faculties is the first object of government. From the protection of different and unequal faculties of acquiring property, the possession of different degrees and kinds of property immediately results, and from the influence of the sentiments and views of the respective proprietors ensues a division of society to different interests and parties. Okay, so what causes the different interests and parties? Well, you guys have to answer that question, right? Don't worry, guys, I'm okay. This giant bug in my belly combined with cancer. Okay. Yes.
Yes, please.
I want you guys to.
Me neither.
All right. So it's asking you, what is he saying? What does he mean when he's talking about the differing abilities of people will naturally keep society from having a single opinion? Khalil.
I'm thinking like different thoughts and opinions.
Okay. And what does he say that directly comes from? In that paragraph. He talks a lot about one word that starts with a P. Property. Okay. Carson, did you want to elaborate?
I was going to say people.
People? Well, we're talking about people right now, right? That the fact that people own different amounts of kinds of property affect people's political views. Okay? And when he's talking about property, is he talking about like actual land, or is he talking about everything you own? Everything you own. Money, property, family, okay? Whatever you own affects your opinion, correct? If you come from a broken home, okay, if you grew up in a terrible situation, and you're kind of fighting to get out of that, and you don't have help from family with money, you don't have help from parents with college, okay? You're 18, you're on your own. You've got no help with school, no help with finding a job, all right? Is your political opinion going to be different from Ivanka Trump? Okay? Who kind of has access to everything in life. That's what he's arguing, is people who come from different backgrounds and have different things, they're gonna have a different opinion. So therefore, we cannot all have the same opinion or beliefs in life. Okay? When we read this stuff, it's like reading a different language. You just have to interpret it into something that we understand. Okay? So go ahead and respond to letter D. When I give you guys like edits on things, I'm not like being mean. I'm just doing my right, Carson, we talked about this. Yeah. When I'm giving feedback, or I'm not being mean, or I'm not calling you out on things. I'm just helping you with your discussion boards and things like that. Okay, so working on. All right, we ready? Here we go. Your next question is going to be letter F. Explain the claim that Madison states in lines 104 to 107 on page. It's going to be on the next page, okay? So we're just going to read this for comprehension real quick. Do you want another book, Ethan?
The latent causes of faction are thus sown in the nature of man, and we see them everywhere brought into different degrees of activity, according to the different circumstances of civil society. A zeal for different opinions concerning religion, concerning government, and many other points, as well as speculation as of practice, an attachment to different leaders ambitiously contending for preeminence and power, or to persons of other descriptions whose fortunes have been interesting to the human passions, have, in turn, divided mankind into parties, inflamed them with mutual animosity, and rendered them much more disposed to vex and oppress each other than to cooperate for their common good. So strong is this propensity of mankind to fall into mutual animosities, that where no substantial occasion presents itself, the most frivolous and fanciful distinctions have been sufficient to kindle their unfriendly passions and excite their most violent conflicts. But the most common and durable source of factions has been the various and unequal distribution of property. Those who hold and those who are without property have ever formed distinct interests in society. Those who are creditors and those who are debtors fall under a like discrimination. A landed interest, a manufacturing interest, a mercantile interest, a money interest, with many lesser interests, grow up of necessity in civilized nations, and divide them into different classes, actuated by different sentiments and views. The regulation of these various and interfering interests forms the principal task of modern legislation, and involves the spirit of party and faction in the necessary and ordinary operations of the government. No man is allowed to be a judge in his own cause, because his interest would certainly bias his judgment, and, not improbably, corrupt his integrity. With equal, nay, with greater reason, a body of men are unfit to be both judges and parties at the same time. Yet what are many of the most important acts of legislation but so many judicial determinations, not indeed concerning the rights of single persons, but concerning the rights of large bodies of citizens? And what are the different classes of legislators but advocates and parties to the causes which they determine? Is a law proposed concerning private debts?
All right. What is his view on humankind in general? Grace. Yeah. Okay. Okay. You wanna head to the office? What is his view on mankind in general? Like the nature of mankind? Greedy. Okay. Self-interested, maybe. All right. Now take a look at lines. Where is it? A landed interest, a manufacturing interest, a mercantile interest, a moneyed interest. What is that called? What's that rhetorical device? Look at the board, everybody. Everybody look at the board. What's that called when an author lists things like that? Carson. Parallelism or parallel structure. Okay. Why would he list every single type of like job interest here? Why would he do that? Why wouldn't he just say, everyone acts by different sentiments and views. Everyone acts by different things, right? Why does he list all these jobs, Kalia? Okay, an emotional poll. All right, Rowan. Okay, so then he's pulling in each individual view, right? So if you're this, you're included. You're this, because everyone read these. Everyone read the Federalist Papers. Okay?
It is a question to which the creditors are parties on one side and the debtors on the other. Justice ought to hold the balance between them. Yet the parties are, and must be, themselves the judges, and the most numerous party, or in other words, the most powerful faction, must be expected to prevail. Shall domestic manufacturers be encouraged, and in what degree, by restrictions on foreign manufacturers, are questions which would be differently decided by the landed and the manufacturing classes, and probably by neither with a sole regard to justice and the public good. The apportionment of taxes on various descriptions of property is an act which seems to require the most exact impartiality. Yet there is, perhaps, no legislative act in which greater opportunity and temptation are given to a predominant party to trample on the rules of justice. Every shilling with which they overburden the inferior number is a shilling saved to their own pockets.
All right, so letter F, which is next. Explain the claim that Madison states in 104 to 107. Okay? That is 109, 108, 107, 106, 105. Justice ought to hold the balance between them, yet the parties are and must be themselves the judges, and the most numerous party, or in other words, the most powerful faction, must be expected to prevail. What is his claim there? I want you to write it in your own words. You got it. Yeah, maybe. What is he saying here? So he says, he's talking about, is a law proposed concerning private debts. It is a question to which the creditors are parties on one side and the debtors on the other. Justice ought to hold the balance between them, between the two sides, the debtors and the creditors. Do you understand what that means, debtors and creditors? Okay. What does it mean if you're in debt? You owe money. What does it mean if you have credit? You get money. Okay. So how could you distinguish the creditors and the debtors? Yeah. Okay. Yet the parties are and must be themselves the judges, and the most numerous party, or in other words, the most powerful one, must be expected to prevail.
So is he saying that even though they're two different parties, they should be able
To the public good. Enlightened statesmen will not always be at the helm, nor, in many cases, can such an adjustment be made at all without taking into view indirect and remote considerations, which will rarely prevail over the immediate interest which one party may find in disregarding the rights of another or the good of the whole. The inference to which we are brought is that the causes of faction cannot be removed, and that relief is only to be sought in the means of controlling its effects.
Does that sound repetitive? Did we already kind of get to that with him? Okay.
If a faction consists of less than a majority, relief is supplied by the Republican principle, which enables the majority to defeat its sinister views by regular vote. It may clog the administration, it may convulse the society, but it will be unable to execute and mask its violence under the forms of the Constitution. When a majority is included in a faction, the form of popular government, on the other hand, enables it to sacrifice to its ruling passion or interest both the public good and the rights of other citizens.
Okay. So, that portion that I highlighted right here, what is that? What, Kalia? A restatement of what? The claim, the premise. Remember his whole reason for writing this. Okay? The inferences to which we are brought is that the causes of faction cannot be removed. Remember, you can't take away the freedom, and you can't take away, and you can't make everyone have the same belief. Okay? But what we can do is what? What does it say? What does it say? What can we do? We cannot affect the cause of the faction, but what can we do? Hannah? We can control the effects, yes. Okay, your next question says, find where Madison restates the purpose of his argument. What is the effect of restating his purpose here? Okay. Now, let's read the next section really quickly.
To secure the public good and private rights against the danger of such a faction, and at the same time to preserve the spirit and the form of popular government, is then the great object to which our inquiries are directed. Let me add that it is the great desideratum by which this form of government can be rescued from the opprobrium under which it has so long labored, and be recommended to the esteem and adoption of mankind.
Okay. Your question says, what is the effect of restating the purpose here? All right. He restates the purpose in the section we just discussed, but then he also kind of elaborates more in this paragraph. Okay? So I want you to think, what is the effect of restating the purpose? Okay, why would he, again, go back to the claim he already made? Okay?
Control. They are not found to be such on the injustice and violence of individuals, and lose their efficacy in proportion to the number combined together, that is, in proportion as their efficacy becomes needful. From this view of the subject, it may be concluded that a pure democracy, by which I mean a society consisting of a small number of citizens, who assemble and administer the government in person, can admit of no cure for the mischiefs of faction. A common passion or interest will, in almost every case, be felt by a majority of the whole. A communication and concert result from the form of government itself, and there is nothing to check the inducements to sacrifice the weaker party or an obnoxious individual. Hence it is that such democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. Theoretic politicians who have patronized this species of government have erroneously supposed that by reducing mankind to a perfect equality in their political rights, they would, at the same time, be perfectly equalized and assimilated in their possessions, their opinions, and their passions. A republic, by which I mean a government in which the scheme of representation takes place, opens a different prospect, and promises the cure for which we are seeking. Let us examine the points in which it varies from pure democracy, and we shall comprehend both the nature of the cure and the efficacy which it must derive from the union.
So how does he define republic? What's a republic to James Madison? Rowan?
He says, a republic by which I mean a government in which the scheme of representation takes place opens a different prospect.
What does that mean in normal people language?
It means that the republic gets to designate who gets represented, and they designate
Okay. Did you want to add to that, Carson?
No.
Okay, so he's saying a republic is a type of government where the scheme of representation takes place. Okay, that means that the people are not directly making the laws, right? I can't write a law. I'm not a senator. But we have representatives in place to make those decisions. Okay? If you think about it, the founders and the creators of our government system really were making sure that the people who were educated and had the power were the ones making the decisions. Right? By having representation, there was a safeguard against people making stupid decisions. Okay? So, you have a couple more questions to do in the last 2 pages. All right? So make sure those are in. In addition, you have a discussion board. All right? So, how does Madison define... I don't understand. How does Madison define the word faction over the course of the text? Okay. Remember that there's the exact word, the exact meaning, but as he goes, he's talking more and more about factions in very different ways. Okay. So I want you to explain, using textual evidence, how he defines the word faction over the course of the text. Okay? Any questions? You need to respond to 2 people. You guys know that. It's a discussion board. Okay? Any questions? This is where you can submit your final project for the American Dream Assignment. Remember, that is due tomorrow by 8 a.m. if you are uploading. If you have some sort of physical thing to give me, bring it into class. Okay? Remember, 10% of your grade is based on whether you turn it in on time or not. How are we feeling?